Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host Harris Faulkner and Emily Campagno. Also joining us, board-certified radiologist and Fox News contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier and Bill Hemmer, co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Well, we begin with new and brutal polls for President Biden. They are bad, revealing that the majority of Americans are losing trust in our 80-year-old president. A new Washington Post ABC News poll shows President Biden's approval rating at, get this, 36%. That's a new low, an all-time low. And Democrats have good reason to worry about the president's age and mental fitness heading into 2024. 63% of Americans said they do not believe Biden has the mental sharpness to effectively serve as president. Even the left-wing media couldn't ignore President Biden's terrible numbers.
This poll is just brutal for President Biden.
Absolutely, George. And you talked earlier about that record low approval rating for President Biden. It's actually 6 points down just since February. And the skepticism over his leadership extends deep inside his own party.
I was told I could not send the poll around to after 12 midnight. I sent it out at 12:02 because it kept me up. And I thought they should wake up and look at those numbers. It's sobering in a sense, George, that the coalition that elected Joe Biden, with the historic numbers that we saw in 2020, that coalition right now is fragmented. That should concern them.
That's not a good number for President Biden. Two-thirds of the American people say he's not sharp enough to be president.
Well, there's at least one Democrat with his head still in the sand. It's our commander-in-chief. Take a listen to what he told MSNBC.
Why do you think your polling is where it is?
Well, I don't think people, by the way, every major one who won re-election, their polling numbers were mine are now.
Bill, I don't know what his pollsters are telling him, but even the ABC News article says this: Biden's approval rating is numerically the lowest on record for any first-term president a year and a half from the next presidential election, in polling dating back to Harry Truman.
Well, I don't know how you get out of this hole because it's pretty deep. One possibility might be, without getting too deep in the weeds, is to do a deal with Republicans on the debt ceiling. I mean, maybe that's a possibility out there, but put that to the side for a moment. Mark Penn, he was a Democratic pollster for Bill Clinton back in the day. He was with Dana and me about 2 hours ago. I said, when was the last time a president was at this level? 36%. He said, Ronald Reagan. Like when you're thinking about an election or a full campaign being a year out, Reagan was at 36%. So that's 1983. You know where the interest rates were back then. You know how tough the country was economically. That's tough to match. Here, I think, are the two numbers that are deep in the poll that I think are the most significant. On mental acuity, I think that correspondent on ABC referred to this. On mental acuity, 94% of Republicans think he's not sharp enough, all right? But 69% of independents think the same thing. That's a stunner to me. Among Americans aged 30 and under, his approval rating is at 26%.
Wow.
That's a big part of a Democratic...
What was the age again?
Under the age of 30.
Yeah, what's happening in
well,
their lives
you know,
right now?
you got student
They can't
loan,
afford anything.
You got student loan forgiveness. Okay, fair point on the economy. You have a lot of policies, I think, that this administration is pushing to try and attract young voters that, you know, stay on board.
Well, tell them not to have good credit and try to buy a house, because that'll work against them.
Right on that. But if you're at 26% of Americans under the age of 30 a year from now, that is very difficult for a Democratic president to win re-election.
But Mark, Penn made a really important point to you. Reagan went on to win re-election. We saw the midterms. The polling numbers were brutal for Joe Biden. He had one of the best midterms in 3 decades. Granted, he wasn't on the ballot. There's a difference here. He'll be on the ballot. But negative for Joe Biden doesn't equal success for Republicans unless they make it a policy choice.
So he just spent 2 weeks ago 20 days on the road talking about the economy, and his numbers have hit the lowest in history. I mean, I think that says it all. And his emphasis, and this is coming from the Washington Post today, his emphasis on what his campaign calls a freedom agenda was an early indication of his determination to shift voters away from their reservations about him and instead make the 2024 general election a choice, obviously between him and Republicans. A view that has been consistent in the polls since before the midterm elections is what they see. The freedom agenda doesn't have anything to do with the economy, although I argue that if you can't afford anything, you're not free. If the border's falling apart and it affects the entire country, you're not free. What part of the freedom agenda are they talking about? And does he know that? They better poster that around the walls in the basement.
Stephanie Ruhle seems to be living in a different economy than we are all. I believe she's the same one who said 9% inflation is something Americans can afford. Well, she has some really bright and rosy diagnoses for the economy. Take a listen.
You have a very strong economic recovery story to tell. And so many of these economic wins could fall by the wayside. As I said, you have a very strong economic recovery story. You're talking about real practical solutions. Why do you think you don't get more credit for it?
Wow, really light, fluffy interview. And Emily, the American people don't feel like Stephanie Ruhle feels. The American people have spoken. We'll put it up. 54% say Trump did a better job handling the economy. 36% say Biden.
Right, we call that leading the witness. And the whole point is that she is providing the specificity that the president fails to provide. We had instead him saying, when asked in defense of obviously the polls and the large concerns that 2/3 of Americans have about his mental acuity, he simply says, I have acquired a hell of a lot of wisdom and no more than the vast majority of people. As the Daily Mail says, humble he ain't. However, what's lacking there is any type of specific with any type of policy achievements. So he also, when he brings up the vice president, says, well, she's not getting the credit that she deserves, nor is she getting the attention. I think she's getting more than enough attention. It's toward her failures as well. But to your point, Kaylee, and here's, I think, what the takeaway should be for the GOP. It frankly doesn't matter, I guess, if despite them giving Kamala Harris titles that are winnable, that she keeps failing at, despite the president failing to accomplish anything, having zero impact on the actual narratives that the woke left, the apologist media, or people under 30 who are influenced by TikTok apparently put forth. None of that matters if the GOP doesn't come out strong with a home run of an articulate, specific policy of here is why you need to vote red. Down the ballot, throughout the country, because otherwise we will be stuck with 4 more years of the same. So I'm not sure, to your point, that tribal allegiance is horrifying to me in the face of what devastation and destruction we are experiencing on a daily basis. But that's not going to matter if we don't provide the alternative clear solution.
Very true. And I think, just real quickly, I think Bill hit the nail on the head. It's going to be debt ceiling fight. And that's going to be, already the Republicans are winning because they put a deal on the table that the president had to spend 2 weeks deciding that he was even going to sit with. And then it wasn't, he's not going to negotiate, and apparently now he might.
Yeah, my only point on that was if you want to attract independents back to your cause.
Either one of them.
What you do is you pay the bills, you do this extension for a year, which is what McCarthy is on record of supporting, and 43 Republican senators are supporting, so long as you cut spending. If he were to do that, honestly, Joe Biden would have done that deal in the 1990s.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And tomorrow's a big moment because right now polling shows voters are blaming both parties for this. And tomorrow and how you frame this issue for both Republicans and Democrats is key after that White House meeting. Nicole, take a look at this. So when undecideds are asked how they're leaning right now, here's what they say. 49% would vote Trump, 42% Biden, 48% DeSantis, 41% Biden. This is a national poll. We are very far out. But those numbers would worry me if I'm sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania.
Well, certainly. And the one thing that you pointed on, and Emily did it as well, that Republicans need to get out of their own way if they actually want to win this election. President Biden won the last election by hiding in his basement. And, Lee Carter on Faulkner Focus did a great job of laying out the poll situation. And as the polling suggests, the president's physical health is declining. And this isn't just us speaking in hyperbole. You look at the White House, the physicals. In 2021, his gait was worsening. In 2022, they said he had stiffer hamstrings. But I could really care less if the president can touch his toes. It's very disingenuous that they continue to not mention his mental acuity and not giving him a full cognitive evaluation. They completely leave that out. And any 80-year-old man is supposed to be having one at his physicals. And so going into this election cycle, yes, we need to continue to have these full physical and mental examinations. But again, on top of that, with the bad policies that have left us into economic turmoil, you have a border with a lot of chaos, you have a running mate who polls less than Joe Biden does. They can still win if you continue to have infighting in the Republican Party, and the Republicans need to come forward, unify, and have a solid message on what they are going to do to improve the state of America.
And coalesce around whoever the nominee is.
Absolutely.
Everyone has to go out and vote. That's just very basic. Big challenge for the Republicans.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.